Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I now invite the Forum to resume its consideration of sub-item C, voluntary national reviews of Agenda Item 2. The Forum will proceed to hear consecutive individual presentations by South Sudan and Yemen, first time presenting countries. Before we begin the presentations, I would like to appeal to the presenting countries to adhere to the agreed 15 minutes per presentation for first-time presenting countries, so as to allow sufficient time for all presenters, as well as engagement with other states and participants. I apologize in advance if I have to interrupt speakers, and I hope that it will not come to that with your cooperation. Given the number of countries making VNR presentation at this year's HLPF, I believe that we all understand that the need to be disciplined so as to allow adequate time for presentations as well as interaction from the floor. The Forum will now hear the voluntary national review by South Sudan, and I invite His Excellency Agustino Ting Mayai, Chair of the National Bureau of Statistics of South Sudan, and his team to make a presentation.
Madam President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am delighted to present on behalf of South Sudan today, South Sudan's first VNR. The presentation proceeds as follows. I will provide a brief background into the policy environment of the country and focusing on SDGs and other policies related to development. And then we'll close with recommendations based on findings of the report. South Sudan, as many of you know, is emerging from conflict and is now transitioning into development. And to do so, it has put in place obligations for itself and aligning those obligations with global and regional platforms and policies. And so South Sudan is now implementing what it calls Vision 2040. And within the vision, there is a revised national development strategy, which is supported by sectorial strategies and policies. And as South Sudan is part of the global community, it is also committing to global obligations, the SDGs in this case, and the 2030 agenda. The revised national development strategy combines both global and national obligations and focused on ensuring that the obligations, at least the priority obligations, are delivered between 2021 and 2024. South Sudan's milestones include adopting the 2015 Sustainable Development Goals, inaugurating the key SDGs on peace and recovery in 2017, making sure there is an analysis of the landscape of data that are available for evaluating SDGs in 2021, revising its development strategies in 2021, and adopting a rescue plan in 2023. And today, South Sudan presents at the high-level platform. South Sudan has selected a number of SDGs for evaluation this year. Number one is no poverty. 2 is zero hunger. 3 is good health and well-being. 4th, quality education, climate action, peace, justice, and strong institutions. But has also provided a light review on SDG 8, which focuses on decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, which is SDG 9. And in all this, South Sudan is zeroing in on gender-related issues. So SDG 5 covers all of the SDGs reviewed. Our approach in generating the information provided today includes the Ministry of Finance leading the process with support from the National Bureau of Statistics and UN agencies. And our data collection methods include reviewing the materials that are available on SDGs and other development plans and strategies, and two, ensuring that there is a consultation across the board which brought together different stakeholders in the country. Based on the information generated, we provide the findings as follows. In terms of progress made overall, South Sudan has made very limited one overall. But then there is a policy environment that we found to have improved in setting up the stage for development and providing inputs in terms of investment to generate outcomes that are positive. And so South Sudan has achieved the mainstreaming of the SDGs into its plans, laws, budgetary aspects, monitoring and evaluation of the system and processes. What then has been achieved with respect to SDG 3, maternal mortality back in 2006 when South Sudan got peace, when the agreement was signed, was estimated at over 2,000 per 100,000 live birth. Today, it is standing at 1,223. That is a reduction. The services have increased along with investment in different health sectors, and immunization of children has also increased. HIV prevalence has decreased. Quality education, 4 aspects that we looked at. First is literacy, and we found that there has been an adult increase. There has been an increase in adult literacy. Enrollment rates have changed, they have fluctuated. For secondary education, they have increased. For primary, they have lowered. But what's important is that gender parity has basically narrowed over the years. If you go back to 2018, it was 0.75. In 2023, it is now 0.87, which is an improvement. On peace, justice, and strong institutions, the first aspect is that there is relative peace and there is an element of recovery. And this is made possible by the agreement that was signed in 2018, inaugurated in 2020. And with the implementation of that agreement, you see women in the political arena having a high participation. And we look at the legislature with the results showing that the participation of women has increased to 32% from 26% in 2013. There's a capacity building aspect as a result of this stability, and institutional building is taking place. The Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs is making that possible. Climate action, South Sudan's emissions remain very low, which in this case means that South Sudan's greenhouse gas emissions is the lowest in the world. South Sudan also has first digital integrated monitoring, reporting, and verification system established, launched in 2021. It has also adopted a national program or plan which provides an opportunity for South Sudan to strengthened climate information system, dealt with climate resilient integrated land management system, and South Sudan has published at least twice nationally determined contribution, reiterating the country's commitment to the Paris Agreement and reflecting the country's changing climate and responding to its development needs and priorities. But in all this, our focus has been to zero in on poverty. So what exactly have we achieved over the years? We find that there has been no positive gain so far in this arena. If you look back in 2016 when poverty rate was 67%, and comparing it today, or more recently in 2013, we see that there has been an increase from 67% that time to close to 83%. Zero hunger, and is demonstrated by the prevalence of stunting among children under 5, which is high, the prevalence of undernourishment, which remains high as well, prevalence of moderate and severe food insecurity, slightly increasing, and the prevalence of acute malnutrition has increased. What challenges underlie what we have seen so far? There are a couple that we have highlighted. Number one is that there is need for South Sudan to dedicate some leadership structure within the system that is focused on SDGs. So far, that does not exist. Data that could be used to evaluate the SDGs are limited because of the weak statistical system. Funding is limited, and this funding is for SDGs as for others. Institutional capacity is weak, and that affects how the institution is concerned with the delivery of SDGs deliver on those. The opportunities that exist are peace and recovery. With the agreement being implemented, there is space for development and recovery. The Ministry of Finance and other institutions are providing policy support across all sectors in order to realize development across the country. The revised National Development Strategy outlines the development priorities that South Sudan is pursuing as they align with the global obligation. The public financial reforms are taking place, with the Ministry of Finance also pursuing those. There are commitments in the country that are drawn from Food System Summit, the Transforming Education Summit, and Health Services and Climate Action. The means of implementation moving forward based on information generated is that there should be the leveraging of governance structure, which would then coordinate the delivery of the SDGs across the board. And there should be a steering committee sitting at the top, supported by the Secretariat, as well as interagency committee, which comprises different stakeholders. And so the elements of implementation include financing, which in this case comprises making sure that the public financial management reforms are pursued in line with the development agenda, providing more resources for different sectors, developing natural climate finance strategy to accelerate access to international support. Partnership has to be strengthened across stakeholders, and the natural statistical system would have to be strengthened in order to evaluate and understand what has been achieved with the SDGs. The reforms would have to be pursued by the government as they stand with support from the international community and region. The enabling environment would have to be created and pursued to commit to peace and stability in the country, and ensuring that institutional frameworks are invested in order to make sure that there's governance and coordination mechanism for SDGs delivery. Thank you very much.
I thank the Chair of the National Bureau of Statistics of South Sudan and his team for the presentation. We will now hear comments and questions from states and other participants. Delegations and participants who wish to intervene in the interactive discussion including those who previously expressed their interest to ask questions after this VNR presentation through the group of friends of the VNR, are invited to press the microphone button, and I would like to remind delegations to kindly limit their interventions to 2 minutes each. And I now give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I wanted to commend South Sudan on carrying out this VNR. We recognize how challenging it is. I'd welcome reflections from you on how the process felt and worked, particularly given the challenges that South Sudan faces. And furthermore, I would welcome reflections and perspectives on the transition of donor sort of humanitarian assistance to development assistance, what more donors can do in the transition of the support, and how it looked as you carried out this VNR. Thank you.
I thank you very much, and I give the floor to the Women's Major Group.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, invited guests. First, I would like to thank the government of South Sudan for its commitment and presenting its first report. From the major group, we have some questions. What has the government put in place to ensure international support aligns with the government vision without imposing contrary agenda? How can South Sudan enhance capacity building for government and NGOs to address climate change and peaceful coexistence? How can the government and international partners support women and girls in achieving SDGs 3, 5, and 16? We also have some recommendations from the major group. The government is recommended to develop an updated strategy to combat economic crisis with World Bank support and organize economic and aid package to improve livelihood. The government should collaborate with the international partners to create a comprehensive agricultural strategy, as 7 million suffer from food insecurity while farmers struggle with climate shocks and insecurity. The government is urged to implement the Maputo Protocol alongside the peace agreement, including enhancing women's participation, addressing gender-based violence, providing safe space for survivors, and ensuring justice by enacting anti-GBV and family law while providing psychosocial support. South Sudan should accelerate the implementation of the National Adaptation Program of Action for Climate Change, and the government is urged to seek global support to help citizens cope. The revitalized peace agreement should be fully implemented. Prioritizing peace, consolidation, and security improvement is essential to avoid conflict during elections or return to war. Supporting local peace initiatives, strengthen conflict early warning and response system, and making governance reform.
I thank you very much. Is there any other delegation wishing to take the floor? If not, I now invite His Excellency Agustino Ting Mayai, Chair of the National Bureau of Statistics, to briefly respond to the questions from the floor.
Thank you very much. The process was engaging across the board, but it was not easy. First, data were not easy to come by, given the fact that South Sudan is struggling to stabilize and to develop its institutions for science and statistics. Number two was that coordination across the board, given the fact that the structure wasn't established, the coordination mechanism for the SDGs was not in place. Nonetheless, the Ministry of Finance, the UN system in the country, put together a team within a few months to arrive at what was presented today. And that included making sure that the team was supported by a consultant, with UNDP providing resources for the consultant, and ensuring that the Ministry of Finance provides guidance in terms of liaising with other institutions in the country. And so we're able to generate the data from different institutions, as well as having the stakeholders discussions or forums, which helped in generating the information. The government, as I mentioned earlier, is transitioning from humanitarian to development. And with international support, there are frameworks that the government put in place in order to attract investment. The public financial management is that instrument that is being utilized right now with, of course, support from international community, the UN system, US, UK, Norway, and other countries supporting the government in realizing the proper management of resources for development in the country. And some of the donor community members are beginning to provide resources directly to the government. Previously, there was a third-party arrangement which keeps the resources away from the government, giving them to a third party for implementation of the activities of the government. There are discussions and there are some actions that have taken place in terms of realizing direct support to the government. The SDG 3, which focuses on health, and I came here with a colleague from the Ministry of Health, is an area that the government is pushing hard to make sure that there is progress. There is international support, of course. Most services in South Sudan are delivered with international support and with some funding from the Ministry of Finance. More efforts are being done, including allocating hospitals and health facilities to be built across the country. Agriculture is key to this year's budgetary plans of the Ministry of Finance, and more resources are being allocated to increase food production, both for local consumption and for business, making sure that there is economic growth resulting from agriculture. As some of you might know, South Sudan emerged from a conflict and with oil resources being available, but the aim of the oil resources when they were being generated at the time we had enough was that those would be used to increase production in agriculture. And so the country continues to pursue that policy objective, and more agricultural work is now being pursued to increase economic development. There were other questions, but I don't think I have enough time for all of them. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. I once again thank the chair of the National Bureau of Statistics of South Sudan and his team for the preparation of VNR as well as its preparation. I also congratulate you again for engaging in your first VNR in spite of challenges that you are facing. This is indeed encouraging. I also thank delegations who have taken the floor, as well as all of you for your interest. Before concluding, I would like to recall that General Assembly Resolution 79/2090B provides that countries conducting VNRs may provide written answers after the high-level political forum if they wish to do so, in case time was too short for them to provide detailed answers during the forum. I now briefly pause the meeting to allow the podium to be arranged, and I invite the VNR presenters of Yemen to approach the podium and take their seats.